Here at Spoonful of Strength, we want to make this podcast interactive. We want to hear your stories and we want you involved in our conversations. Follow Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, where we will post questions throughout the week. Your answers may be shared on our podcast. Do you have a story to share? Send us a message on Spoonful of Strength on Instagram with your health journey, and we may interview you on this show. Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them, where we talk all things chronic. Here's your host, Rachel and Tina.
Welcome to Spoonful of Strength. On this episode, we will be speaking with Karissa, who will be joining us from Ohio, and she will talk about her journey of managing through a descended cerebellar tonsil and a syrinx, and also how she went in for a routine, the lumbar puncture, and how that has caused other symptoms, new symptoms, as a result of trying to find answers on the original symptoms. And she will be joining us in just a minute. How is your week going, Rachel?
Not bad. Just gearing up for surgery in a couple weeks, and trying to get all that stuff put together. How about you?
Mine's going okay. I'm hopeful that the latest epidural, the lumbar epidural that I had gotten a couple weeks ago, seems to be giving me some relief. So I'm hopeful that I'm on the upswing. The hard part is that even though, like, at physical therapy, they reevaluated me, so I know that there's still a lot of weakness in my lower back and a lot of work to do. So now I'm at that point where I need to make sure I don't re-injure myself because I'm not feeling the pain and still try to protect that.
So was this your third shot?
No, this was my second one. I have a third one coming up. July, I think it's scheduled for July 11th. Will be the third one. So I'm hopeful. And then I'm also coming up due on, it's time to be scheduling my next PET scan again. So we'll get that on the books coming up soon as well.
You know, we're always got our fingers crossed, our little girls chat. So we'll be anxious to hear about that being clean again. So
yeah. I find I don't get too nervous about that anymore, because
that's good.
I realize that it's not going to change the outcome anyway. So
yeah, well, you're a lot better than I am. I panic and stress about everything, but
it was a lot of work to get to that point. So and we'll talk about that on a different topic one week.
We can have a whole episode on how to calm Rachel down.
All right, with that, let's welcome Karissa in with us.
So welcome, Karissa. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm all right. I'm actually doing all right today. I feel better than I have for a couple days, so I'm glad you caught me on a good day. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm so glad. So, we wanted to hear about your story. We wanted to kind of go through your health journey and ask you a little bit of questions. So let's start out. We always have to start out and just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, and then we can learn a little bit more about your health.
Okay, so I am I'm going to be 42 next month, or this month, actually, when this airs, it'll be this month. I live in Ohio. I grew up in Ohio. I moved to the West Coast for a long time. I lived in Portland, and then I lived in LA, and then I moved back here before COVID to help with my parents, and just kind of different life, and moved back here. But before I was ill, I worked in software. I did product development stuff, and I enjoyed traveling and cooking and was just getting into working out and some of that kind of stuff. I had just done a couple 5Ks and things like that. So that's kind of me.
Mm.
I just was uh, kind of, it's weird because I got sick kind of right after COVID. So it feels like this really long year
Mm.
almost,
Yeah.
but but before COVID and all this, that's kind of what I like traveling and, it's starting to forget what I was before. But yeah, that's what I used to love. But yeah, I'm just kind of a Midwest girl. I have a dog and a cat that are my babies. They are my children. My dog's Rocky and my cat is Panda, and they are just everything. So, and then I have a bunch of
Mhm.
nieces and nephews. So they're kind of that's what I love, my family and just hanging out.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the pain and symptoms first started?
Yeah, so for my health journey, so it kind of started with it, I mean, for years, probably almost 20 years, I'd always had really bad neck pain, and it just had gotten to the point, this was in 2022. It just gotten to the point where it like started radiating down my shoulders, and I was starting to have all these pains in my legs, and my PCP just I kept getting referred for physical therapy, and I'm like, this just isn't doing anything, So I self-referred myself to a pain management doctor, and she did a cervical MRI and found that I had a syrinx, which is a fluid-filled cyst in the middle of the spinal cord, and then also kind of they call it Chiari Malformation. It's a descended cerebellar tonsil. So for me, my pain had been there. I had never knew I had anything like that. But once I started reading about those two um, issues, I saw, okay, this makes a lot of sense with the pain I've been having. So from that, I was referred to a neurosurgeon just to monitor the cerebellar distension, just the symptoms, just monitoring the pain. And at that point, that pain was manageable. My doctor, she had put me on Lyrica, and I felt all right. Like that pain that I was having in my arms and my legs, I was still able to work, and I was feeling better. That made me feel better. But so I went to this neurosurgeon, and for diagnostic treatment. And of course, normally I'm someone who likes to look at everything and make sure I know everything before I go in. But I was like, all right, I also, see the negative of that. So for this was the one time in my life that I went in and I was trusting that this neurosurgeon, he was the head of the department. So I felt like I was in good hands. And he ordered a diagnostic lumbar puncture to check my cerebral spinal fluid pressure to see if it was high, because the type of symptoms I was having sometimes are related to high pressure. So he thought, let's check that. Let's see if there's low pressure, or sorry, high pressure, and that, will help us diagnose the symptoms or figure out a treatment plan. So during the lumbar puncture itself, the pain that I'd had for 20 years, it was this pain in the back of my neck in the middle. I actually felt that dissolve. Like that pain went away. This halo type pain that I'd had around my neck, I felt that go away during the lumbar puncture. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I didn't have a high pressure. Everything, it looked normal. And I felt okay for a couple days. And then after about 3 days is when I had the hallmark symptom, I think is kind of what they would call it, this lumbar puncture causing a leak, which was that there's like these orthostatic headaches. It's this headache in the back of my head, and I feel like headache's not even the right word for it. It just isn't even, it needs a new name because it's just such a different type of pain. But it's this, it almost feels like something's yanking your brain from the back of your head, trying to come out of the, almost like a shop vac taking your brain out of the back of your skull. what it feels like. And so I started getting those symptoms about 3 days after. Um, and so after that, the treatment for that they do is an epidural blood patch to try to seal up the leak. And I had two of those done with no symptom relief. So at that point, that neurosurgeon basically kind of like left me hanging, honestly, and I was in so much pain. I really didn't know what was going on at that point. I knew that it felt like a leak. The symptoms felt like a leak, but the doctor was telling me, I'm not finding any issues, so we don't think that you have a leak, because the tools that we use to show that you have a leak and to treat a leak aren't working. So at that point, I had a lot of pain. I mean, more pain than I've ever had before. And with this type of pain, it's orthostatic. So the the silver lining, I guess, is that there is some relief from that pain by lying flat. But that's also, lying flat. So it's, you're just stuck. And so at that point, that's where I was at with the pain. I was in a lot of pain. I had no doctor, and I didn't know what it was. Um, yeah, so that's that's when I was able to kind of put some symptoms I was having together, because it wasn't only the pain. There were some other issues that I noticed that I was just trying to put them together. Like I had my nose was always running. Um, and my ears, the ear canals actually like change shape, and it feels like there's something stuck in my ear all the time. So by putting those symptoms together in a Google search, like putting like ear pain near my cheekbone, kind of a weird combination of things, I was able to find that a hospital group in Cleveland had a team that works on these CSF Leak. So that's when I was able to get connected with that group and get in with a doctor there. And it, they confirmed that I have all the symptoms of a leak, and we keep trying to find the leak, but that doesn't come easily. And as I'm learning more,
Mhm.
I'm finding that it seems, I believe that the stats about 75% of the people with leaks don't have anything that shows on imaging. So where that leaves you is, it's something that I think wasn't taught in med school for a long time. Um, so there's a not a actually a lot of doctors that are even very familiar with it, so it's not something that they would that they would think of on their own. I think it would be the zebra. It would be the zebra diagnosis. It wouldn't be even with a known puncture, and a source, it's it's been tough to try to get that confirmation that I do have a leak and that I'm believed. That part alone has been hard. But anyway, that's kind of been where the pain is. It's been a little over a year for me. It was in March of 23 that this happened. So I've had this now for about a year and 3 months or so. And it is just it's been 100% catastrophic to my life. The pain and the way that it's changed my life, this whole thing, and just the different symptoms that I've gotten, that have developed after. I keep getting worse, and that's the part that's really really hard for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's the pain, and then there's just a plethora of symptoms that go along with the pain that are just hard to wrap my head around. And then on top of that, just I think the bigger thing that I didn't realize I would deal with something happening like this is the grief. um
Mhm.
and that alone is so enormous that it's hard to deal with that and the pain and trying to find the treatment. So that's kind of where I've lived in the last year. I feel like I've been navigating my way through a jungle maze
Yeah.
and trying to come up for air, and it's just I've gotten to a point now where I've figured out some ways to manage the pain, and I've also learned that I'm very lucky in the fact that I've already gotten a diagnosis, and that I have doctors that believe me, and a team,
Mhm.
and and I'm waiting. But yeah, that's my pain is it's tough. It's a huge adjustment. So I stopped working about a month after it happened, on leave, and then ended up leaving my job in September. And I think that for me was probably the hardest part. I don't know about for you guys, but once that flipped over to not working and it being my full-time job to be sick, it's like it shifts something, in your whole
Yeah.
mindset.
Yep. Boy,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
I want to kind of go ask you a couple questions to
Sure.
kind of go through all of this, but so the pain that you had prior to the lumbar puncture, you were still
Mhm.
working and everything. So what, and you mentioned during the lumbar puncture that you had that halo pain go away. So what of your symptoms that you had before the lumbar puncture, are those still there in
Mhm.
addition to everything that you've endured, or did you get any relief
Yeah.
from that?
So So in a way, well, no. Unfortunately, it didn't relieve any of those symptoms before.
Mhm.
It changed it a little. Like I don't have the pain that felt like a knob in the back of my head, but I have a different pain there now. So the pain changed. That pain isn't there, but there's different pain, and
It
it
sounds
didn't,
like a lot more.
unfortunately. Yeah, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it didn't relieve the like extremity pain that kind of started the journey. That's actually gotten much worse, unfortunately, to the point where I can't feel my fingers hardly at all. Or my feet. So
Mm.
it's that. I mean, I laugh about it, but it's like, man, I actually
Yeah.
it's and some of it, that pain may be partly due to the pharynx as well. That one thing I did find out from the doctors is that they said that my imaging from before that lumbar puncture and after of that pharynx and the descended cerebellar tonsil, it actually did stabilize. So something did shift in there when they did that lumbar puncture for sure. They know that something moved. Um, so it all makes sense, like logically, that the pain changed, and that it was there and now it's different. But everything's still there, and I think that's the harder part is I don't know what the source of the pain is now. It's like, is it
Mhm.
from the leak? Is it from the medicine? Is it from the syrinx? Is it from some new side effects? As because one of the other things that I'm finding is with a CSF leak is, there's not a lot of long-term data yet collected on patients on how they're living with this long term, and what is that doing to your brain? If you think about it, your brain's in this sack of fluid, and it's kind of just sitting there floating, and I always think about it as a cube of jello in a water bottle. Like what happens as you shake that around, and it's not, if the water bottle's not full, and it's not protected, that's getting squished and jiggled, and then I'm like, okay, what is that doing to my brain then?
We thought we'd take a brief pause in our podcast to enjoy what I call a mini mindful moment. Now, mindfulness is, if you're not familiar with the concept, that is the practice of just being present in this particular moment in time. We're not thinking about things that have happened in the past. We're not thinking of things that are coming up. We're simply in this here and now. So I encourage you to join us on a little mindful moment here as I guide you through how to quiet your mind. One of my favorite techniques of that is simply become focused on my breath. So if you settle in, close your eyes, try to quiet your mind, and simply focus on taking a nice deep breath in through your nose, feeling it all the way down from your diaphragm all the way up, and hold it. And then release that breath through the mouth. One big long breath out. And there should be no other thoughts going through your mind. Just simply focus on breathing in. Nice deep breath in through the nose and hold it. And deep breath out through your mouth, releasing all that tension in your body. Feeling yourself connected to nothing more than your body and your mind. You hear any outside noises, just simply push them away. Only concentrate on that breath. Deep breath in, hold it, and a nice long breath out. And if you find your mind starting to wander, just bring it back to focusing on nothing more than the process of those deep breath in all the way through the very bottom of your pit of your stomach, all the way up into your lungs. Nice and deep breath, and hold it. And a nice deep breath out. Simply quieting your mind and focusing only on those nice deep breaths in and a long breath out. And then take just a couple seconds, a few more breaths on your own. I won't guide you through these. If you find your mind starting to wander, just bring it right back to just focusing on the breath and nothing more. Give you a couple seconds to do a few deep breaths. And on your last exhale, nice deep exhale, and open your eyes and come back to the present moment and join us back on the remainder of our podcast.
So obviously it's putting all that compression on the cranial nerves, and as time has gone on, I've definitely noticed an increase of symptoms due to that, and some of those are just awful. Like I have urinary incontinence now, that it just simply because I have no feeling, and it's not that I can't hold, I just have no feeling. So I have to set a timer, to go to the bathroom every 3 hours, things like that are just crazy, unreal, and I get about 4 hours of time before I call it my brain popping. I call it the brain pain, is that type of pain that won't go away from anything. The headache from the leak. The other types of pain, the pain's there constantly. And I consider it 5 types of pain. There's there's like the bone pain, and the doctors kind of call that fibromyalgia type pain. And of course, what they say is, um, you know, get an hour of aerobic activity is how they told me to try to get rid of that type of pain. And it's like, okay, well, I only get 4 hours a day. I can't really do much, and getting aerobic activity is hard. Luckily, my pain management doctor and I both kind of at the same time around December thought about swimming, um, because it's low impact, and we're like, all right, maybe that with the floating that actually ended up being amazing. Um, it doesn't even use the upright time, the 4 hours of time that I get a day before my head pain kicks in. It doesn't even impact that. So it's almost like free time, I consider it. So for a while during the winter, I was spending, 3 or 4 hours just kind of floating around in the pool just so I could stretch. And that is wonderful. It's still hard to get that aerobic level activity, and you never know if you're going to be able to even get to the pool, right? Like the pain, it that's not something you could count on every day. And, going to the YMCA, that's not ideal. It's a 3 hour round trip activity to be able to go to a pool. You know what I mean? Like it's not, anyway. So it's just, so that's the first type of pain, that skeletal pain. Then there's the muscular pain. And I think two of those are both getting worse just from all the laying down I do, all the time in bed. Those just continue to get worse. I've found that, I can't take NSAIDs. I had gastric bypass a few years ago, so I don't take any NSAIDs. And the pain meds, of course, they don't really get rid of the pain. They either make me loopy or just fall asleep. Um, I find that the thing that works the best for me on a regular basis is I use medical cannabis. Um, and I use a tincture, and that's the one that I know at least takes the edge off so I can get out of bed. um,
Yeah.
So those are the two that I feel like hurt the most, those two types of pain that I can actually get rid of, those muscular skeletal. The nerve pains, that one I have no control over. That's that third type of pain. And there's the nerve pain that's just from, I think, the compression of those cranial nerves that just, it feels a little bit like neuropathy type pain. It's burning. It will feel like sometimes I'll have to look at my legs and see that there's not, hot boiling water on them, just pain like that. I'll feel like there's bugs crawling on me all the time. I mean, just I have facial nerve pain that never goes away now. It feels like, and this is in addition to that pulling brain pain. It feels like all of my face, but the whole front of my face feels like it's actually imploding, and the skin's being yanked off of my face. So it's a lot of bizarre symptoms that I had never knew existed. And I always wonder, I always tell my friends, I say, I wonder how many people in history had a CSF leak and ended up in a mental institution, because I could see how you would feel that you were insane if you just had these types of symptoms and had no reason, didn't know why this was happening, because your body just feels like it's not yours anymore. And it's unreal.
So I'm curious because you have two things going on. You have the syrinx and then the DCT. Is there a correlation between the two, or is it just one of those strange coincidences
right.
that you are dealing with both of those?
Well, they're not sure. So, I think there is a correlation between wherever this leak is, or whatever's happening and what caused the syrinx. They do think that there was some issue that existed before, and typically what causes a syrinx, they say, is decrease in the flow of the spinal fluid down through the canal there. So it usually forms if there's um, you know, a blockage, or if it's too tight, that's what forms the searing. So they think the doctors definitely think there might be a correlation, but at this point, it's all just theory and looking for where it might be. Um, I think it would have been a lot more stable had we not done a lumbar puncture, obviously, and not had caused wherever this leak is or whatever's happening that's causing the low pressure, right? Um, so there was something causing. Usually, they actually think it might have been a high pressure thing that causes the searing. So something happened in there before, and then the lumbar puncture happened, and now I have low pressure. So yeah, there was I had an issue before, but we don't know how related it is, at this point. Um, I'm sure it didn't make it any better. I know that. um, but yeah, at this point, they don't really know the connection. And what I found too with the CSF leak is, um, it seems like once you get to the point of diagnosis, everything after that, it seems very individual. There's a few different types of treatment, but it's like finding the leak and forming that treatment plan. It seems like every case that I've read, it's very unique at that point, right? It's not, especially when they're not showing up on imaging and they can't even find at this point if it's cranial or spinal. It makes it hard to know what's related and what's going on. The only thing that they found on my imaging at all that's out of the normal is there's a little bit of a flattening in my pituitary area in my brain. So that's really the only clue that they have at this point, other than the symptoms. Is just that and the fact that there's a known puncture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about what your daily life looks like, and I can't imagine, having to spend 95% of your day laying down. And you talked a little bit about the mentality part of that, and what have your struggles been like mentally in this,
Oh,
16-month, time?
right. Oh my goodness. So I'll tell you, the first thing is I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that I had ever sat alone with my thoughts. Um, Probably since I was 18. Like once you're, women in their 30s, 40s, were on the go nonstop, right? And before I was working 60 hours a week and so busy and not really thinking about anything that's going on in life, right? And so
Yeah.
then I have to stop, and you're laying there for 20 hours a day. You don't know what's wrong with you, so you have that grief, and then just having so much time. I feel that I honestly feel that I've had to deal with everything that I've ever done in my life and grieve through it in the last 16 months. I think just finding, for me, the hardest part has been figuring out a purpose, because I have a very type A personality. I like to have lists that I check off and feel accomplished in a day, and this life doesn't let you do that same way. And for the first 6 months, it was, okay, what can I do? Am I going to make myself worse? Once I understood, I had a kind of a range of, okay, I know I can do this now. Then it was, how do I live? What is my day going to look like? What does every day look like? And it's just, it's still hard. It's still trying to figure out, how do I have a purpose? How do I feel like I accomplished something for the day? How do I still feel like I'm a useful person? And that's been my struggle for me. I'm very fortunate that I moved back here to help my parents, and now they're helping me because they have to do so much. They do the cooking, they clean. My only thing that I try to do now, it has been trying to keep the house clean for what I can do, and
Mm-hmm.
that has been like, it involves me with a 14-day round the house schedule. Like every other day I clean one room, kind of, that type of schedule that I tried to keep. So I felt like I was accomplishing something, and but I'm not keeping up, so that's something I'm giving in, and I have, hiring a cleaner again. But things like that are just hard for me to number one, I have never been someone that had to rely on anyone before, and for me to have to rely on my parents now, that alone has been such a huge change. Not being able to help. I don't drive anymore for the most part because of the medication and just the symptoms, the neurological symptoms. I just don't know that I feel that my response time, would be okay. Like I feel all right driving, maybe five minutes away, but not far, not any trips. So any doctor's appointments, anything like that, are at least an hour away from me. I kind of live um, a little bit further away from Cleveland. So, that's a lot of burden on them too. So my life is just completely different. And it's just, I don't even know that I would say I'm not adjusted yet. Every day is just filled with anxiety. First the medical anxiety that there's not going to be a fix, that I'm not going to ever be healed. That's the thing I think that I worry about the most, obviously. But this is it forever. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Um, and so that's obviously the hardest thing. And then I think the second thing that I never thought I'd have to worry about is, just having it over my head all the time that um someone's in charge of my money now, like that I have this long-term disability that's paying for my life now, and I'm relying on that as I wait for social security claims, and just relying on that for my living, and having that over your head every day, and knowing like someone has to believe you're sick, and especially with something neurological like this where um it's so long between appointments and there's really nothing happening. At this point, my treatment is maintaining my symptoms and waiting for my referrals to either Duke or Mayo to come up in the wait list, and it's so there's really not a lot happening. I make sure to schedule appointments with my doctors on a regular basis, but they don't, it's like that's a lot of work to get to an appointment. It's hard for me to ride in a car for an hour is almost impossible. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say it's almost impossible because now I know I can make it all the way to Toronto. It just takes a long time. I did make it up there for a medical conference, so that was a 4-hour drive. But it's very hard. It takes a lot of medication and a lot of planning to make it to an appointment. And then how it goes at the appointment. You get to a neurologist or a neurosurgeon, and you sit there with them for 2 to 5 minutes. I feel like normally, not to say they're my neurologist is wonderful, but it's just it takes an hour of time of to get there. It takes 4 hours of mental prep to get in the car, 6 hours of medication a day to recover for a 5-minute appointment that has to be enough for the insurance company to believe that you're sick. And it's just things like that I never thought that would be an everyday worry that now are just always at the top of my head. And so it's like, just those things alone make it impossible to to feel like I can focus and get things done, and just try to have a day like it takes me, 2 or 3 hours to make a meal for myself because I can't focus anymore, and just the cognitive issues, forgetting and trying to remember how to make things or what I was doing. And it's just it's I think the biggest thing to me has been I never realized that you can waste so many days. You feel like you don't the time goes by, but you don't get much done. And you just, it's like this time passes so slowly and so quickly at the same time while I'm sitting here waiting. And and my world has gotten so small. I think that's been the big thing. My world now is a pink bedroom. It's a dark room where I spend 90% of my time. Luckily, now that it's summer, that helps. I can sit outside, lay outside. Uh, that's certainly helped make me feel a little bit better this year.
Did you know Spoonful of Strength is not just a podcast? We have an Instagram page called Spoonful of Strength where you can see clips of our upcoming episodes, learn about different illnesses, and we share other people's stories. We also have an Etsy shop where you can shop for clothing such as t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies. You can find candles and mugs and tumblers and blankets. You can find it all. We support all chronic illnesses, and the great thing is, if you find a t-shirt in our shop for multiple sclerosis, we can change that for lupus or Ehlers-Danlos or any other illness that you need. Everything is customizable in our shop. Use the code podcast for 20% off your entire order.
My days are a lot of nothing, and it's hard to feel like a person anymore. I just feel like a blob. It's been eye-opening. I had no idea this even existed before it happened. And it's something I had no idea that this kind of pain could exist. And especially not knowing how it's going to vary one day to the other, to the next. That's the hard thing. It's like, for me, trying to have a plan or keep a planner, even trying to block days is hard because it's like, okay, well, maybe Tuesday I'm not going to be able to cut berries because my fingers aren't going to work that day, So it's like even the smallest things you really can't plan for, and it's just been so eye-opening. My parents have been so amazing. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have them. I would be completely alone. And I know I'm very fortunate. Um I've found ways to try to relieve the pain with some alternative medicine things. Going to places like iCryo, um, to do some of the like red light therapies, the infrared sauna, actually even the cryogenic, the freezer. I, that that does give me a lot of pain relief. Some of those things, just trying to think outside the box. So that's what I'm now trying to focus on is, learning more, raising awareness, and trying to figure out different ways to manage the pain. And I feel like hopefully if I can get a hold of grasp on that, then maybe I can start having more of a meaningful life. So that's been the big thing. Well, actually, I should say for the last few months, I have been really working on the anxiety too. I got a new therapist. I did. I had weaned off of a Zoloft during this time because of the fact that that's one of the treatments for the spinal fluid pressure is a lot of different old antidepressants and antipsychotics, that they're repurposing. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't on anything that would interfere with the treatment plan. So I also had weaned off of that. So on top of all of this grief, I was also weaning off of Zoloft. But just just rebalancing and trying to figure out how to live in this new self has been really hard. You know, I told my friend I think it took a team of three different, I think I have four different mental health providers now, you know, but that's what it took to get me to a point where I feel like I have the tools I need now. You know, I'm doing some biofeedback therapy, because actually that's some of the side effect is some of these vagus nerve symptoms that I have, that cause panic attacks, and just some of that other anxiety type feeling. So I've been trying to do some biofeedback training and retraining my brain, and therapy and new medications, just, you know, trying to get the anxiety to a manageable level so that volume is turned down enough to try to get something done during the day. You know, it's just
Right.
between the pain and anxiety, it's like one of the two. Which one is going to flip up for the day and paralyze me? I don't know which, but you know,
Yeah.
it,
But it sounds like you've got a lot
pick
of
a side.
tools. You've learned a lot
Yeah.
of things, and I know it, you know, from what you've said, it's overwhelming, and you're in this waiting period, and while you're in this waiting period to figure out if it can be fixed, it's, you know, all of those things, and everything that you're saying is completely normal. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. I mean, what you're having to deal with is unimaginable. And you know, you said something that resonated with me about what is your purpose. And some of the things that you said about having to quit your job, you know, I really related to, because I was the same way. I worked like 60, 70 hours a week traveling and came to a complete stop. And it's very hard to sit and go, well, what does my life look like now? And what am I, you know, what am I here for? And all of that. And I think that you need to not push that right now, because it will come to you. You know, focus on that, because you do have a purpose. And I hope that you know that you do have your purpose. Maybe you just don't know it yet, and maybe you just have to go through a couple more things to get there. And the mental part, I think, sometimes can be more difficult than the physical part. And what you're going through, I just hope that you know that you know, it's easy for us to say, hang in there, you know, keep going and all that. We don't have to live, you know, your life. And I just hope that you know that we're all here with you, and we're a group of people that are all going through something at different degrees and different levels and all of that. But we just all want peace and good health for everybody. Tina, do you have anything to add to that?
You summed that up, you know, very perfectly, as far as, like, I feel like all of us that have gone through a serious chronic illness is just trying to figure out that new normal. And you know, it's a tough journey to figure out. But for me, at least, I feel like it's always changing too. It's like, oh, this is my new normal, and I'm like, nope, I guess that's not it. So just know that you're not alone in feeling lost and figuring out, you know, what's next, what's the purpose, because I think many of us have gone through that.
And I'm glad that I found, you know, some of these support groups and some of these pages on Instagram, because honestly, I didn't know that this world existed. You know, when you're healthy, you kind of, you don't know. You know that there's sick people, you know, and I worked in healthcare, so obviously I knew that there's people that were sick, and you know, but until you're living it, you just don't. It's just not the same, you know. And you're right. This community's huge, and I'm so glad to have found it. It's like a fraternity, you know. It's almost like I almost think of it almost like a military, you know, it's like a
Mm.
group of people dealing with the same thing and fighting for the same purpose, you know, and thank goodness we have each other. But thank you for that. But it is it's hard to feel that you're not alone when you're spending, you know, 95% of your time laying in a bed alone. So it is good to remember that people are out there for sure.
Yeah. It's like the greatest group you really don't want to be a part of, you know,
Yeah, right. The club
but
you never wanted to
uh,
join.
yeah, yeah, you
Yeah,
never want to join it. And it took me, I mean, I'm 8 years out from diagnosis, and I just started getting into the groups and seeing all the support. And,
yeah,
you have a bad day, you can post about it and get support from people who know your story, and who know, that
right.
sometimes you just need somebody to say, it's okay, I'm here for you, or I understand how frustrating it is, and all of that. And we just want to thank you for coming on today, because this is something that I think both Tina and I maybe weren't aware of this condition, and certainly feel for, where you're at in that spot of waiting to get a diagnosis, and
Hmm.
how frustrating that can be. And I'm so glad you found swimming. I think that's I think that is just wonderful to have an outlet that can
Yeah,
give you a little bit more time every day. And we just want, your purpose is part of your purpose is just spreading awareness. And you did that today
right.
by just sharing
Yeah.
your story and everything. So we always ask um, where people can find you online, so that they can find your Instagram page or Facebook page
Yeah.
or anything you've got going on. So where can people find you so that they can support you more?
Yes, my Instagram it's my nickname. It's KFO, KFO, and then Faux Shore, FOSHO, KFOFOSHO is my Instagram handle. But yes, please reach out, and I can also send you my email if you want to put it in the podcast. If anyone
Yeah.
has similar questions or wants to connect to, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, we
Like,
will attach all
yeah,
that to our episode, so people will be able to find you really easily. And yes, connect with you. Maybe if somebody has been in a similar situation, share your
yeah,
tips and tricks. And if you're somebody who's just new in this,
yep,
illness, then they can reach out to you, and all of that. So we wish for you speedy diagnosis, that hopefully they can get things taken care of for you. And just want you to understand what a wonderful individual you are. And it shows a lot of bravery to come on and talk about your story and everything. And we just can't thank you enough for being with us today.
yes. Thank you so much for having me and helping me spread awareness about CSF leaks because, like I said, I had no idea it existed before, and I don't think it's as rare as we think it is, but just it's something nobody's tracked before. So we're learning lots. There's a lot of new data being collected now
Yeah.
for sure. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. That was a really interesting story. I enjoyed meeting Karissa, and wow, she's going through quite a bit. What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah. I mean, I can just feel the emotion in her, and you know, my story is not the same as hers, and everybody's story is different, but I did connect with her just a little bit on that almost anxiety of what does my life look like. So my heart just goes out to her, because I know that what she's going through right now, she has no idea what the future looks like, as many of us face. And that can be really, really scary. And for her to be in a position where she's laying flat for, 20 hours a day is got to be just emotionally, I can't even say difficult, not even the right word, but to deal with that is just unimaginable. And she's handling it like a champ.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to adjust. It sounds like she was a very active person leading up to this happening. And so to make that adjustment of having to focus on yourself and take that rest, the time to rest, and simply not be able to do the things you used to is a lot to work through. So she seems to do and slowly working her way through, navigating through that the new normal, so to speak.
Yeah. And she mentioned, her circle of friends, it gets smaller as you get older anyway. But then to be in a position where, you can't just go out to lunch with your friends or, have the relationships that you want to have. And also the guilt she talked about with having to, moving back in with her folks to take care of them. And it ends up taking care, they're taking care of her. She's got a lot going on. And I recommend, if anybody's going through, not even the CFS leak, but if anybody's going through anything where you're just lost, let's reach out to each other. We'll be posting her Instagram handle, and she's going to share her email as well. Let's start reaching out to people and checking to see if they're okay and building relationships through this community that we've got. And because we're all very much alike in the core of what we're all going through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it's important for us all to lean on each other as we go through this, even if we're dealing with different illnesses. Because I know it's easy to reach that point of, your non-sick friend, so to speak, and family. You're like, oh, I don't want to keep bringing them down. I don't want to keep complaining, or I don't, they just don't understand it. So to have that community of people that do understand where you're coming from is just so, so important to feel supported and not so alone. Join us on the next podcast on this coming Tuesday on adjusting to the new normal, which we talk about that quite often of figuring out the new normal. And it's not an easy wake up in the morning and go, okay, I'm going to embrace my new normal. So there's, we'll talk a little bit about the struggles and maybe trying to figure out what that new normal looks like and how to try to settle in a little bit on that. We will chat with you next Tuesday. Looking forward to having you joining us. And thank you so much for tuning in this week.
Take care.
Have a wonderful weekend.